All right. Well, I just can't wait anymore. So I'm technically a minute early, but let's go ahead. And I'd like to introduce David Pires. He is a principal consultant at CACI working on the Tableau implementation of an external-facing benchmarking service. With a background in retail banking, David discovered Tableau a couple of years ago. Active in the Tableau community and a keen blogger, he misses the sun and the food from Portugal. Let's give a warm welcome to David. Take it away.
Hi, Emily. Thank you very much. And before I get started, I would just like to thank you and Jen for putting the Tableau Fringe Festival together. It's really good, and it's a really good opportunity for those who can't make it to the conferences or can't wait until November for the big Tableau conference. They have a chance to hear from so many people from the community, and the panel just before was amazing as well. So thank you for the effort and the time that both you and Jen put into it. So what I'd like to talk about today is a little bit of my experience, how I kind of got involved in data visualization, or a little bit about my process to learn and how my skills have improved. And some of it actually relates to some of the comments on the panel, where if you don't have that type of background and then you end up somehow working on it, how you then bridge the gap around the skills gaps that you need to be good at your job. So things I would like to cover today is how I kind of got started, a little bit of inspiration and how I found the community of Tableau, resources, going a little bit through the practice, so how to improve your skills and why you should take part in the community. So just a little bit of background about myself. I'm originally from Lisbon. I've moved to the UK back in 2005 to work for Barclays on their mortgage division. Then I moved to another company, became a mortgage advisor at the worst time possible, just at the end of 2008, which meant that the financial crash was soon after, and I had to find something else to do. So I became an analyst at some point at the company that I'm working for, and around 2013, 2014, we kind of decided that we needed to change the way that we were doing things, the way that our technology stack was outdated. We needed to do things differently. And I kind of put my hand up to be part of the project team to do the Tableau implementation. Well, we didn't know it was a Tableau implementation at the time, and I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. So back then what we did was we had to do a proof of concept, and for anyone that is in a position of having to choose the software they're going to buy and to justify it, it can be a bit tricky, because I don't know if you're familiar with Gartner. It's a report that comes out every year from the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and what it allows you to do is it not only looks at different types of tools. So, for instance, it doesn't look just at does a vendor have a bar chart, does the other vendor has a Venn diagram, but it look at very important things. Say, for instance, research and development. I don't know how many of you know this, but compared to their competitors, Tableau invests a lot more percentage terms of their revenue in research and development. That doesn't really come as a shocker if you have been using Tableau for longer than a year and you've seen the innovation that they have been putting to the product. But this was kind of the landscape. So in 2013 on your left and then 2014 on your right. After a lengthy proof of concept, we kind of went with Tableau, which was amazing and really shiny new toy. And I couldn't wait to get my hands on the tool and be able to start creating amazing dashboards. But what really happened was I spent the next 6 months. So the project started January 15. Spend the next 6 months just working with database developers on database models, on the architecture of the whole infrastructure and security, and how everything was going to hang together, and it was all rather dull. What I really wanted to do was to be up there just enjoying the sun and enjoying the new tool that we just bought. But at the time, it's like those first 6 months were really tedious, which kind of led me to look at things outside of work. The first thing I did was to look at the forums. I had a look at, so I remember looking at the forums. I remember seeing Pooja there and a lot of other Tableau familiar faces now in the community. And then I found Twitter. But really the cornerstone was when I attended the Tableau conference on tour last year. Apart from all the Tableau geekiness that happens in Tableau conferences, there's something else that's really good. It's the ability that you get to see the keynotes. And there are two that kind of stood out for me last year. One was Dr. Anna Fry. She was talking about the mathematics of love. And I believe you can still catch her at TEDx in her talk on TEDx. The other one was Ben Goldacre. He's a researcher from Oxford, and what he was talking about was about lying with data. For those familiar with UK papers, he kind of made a point about the Daily Mail. And then what that gave me was it really piqued my interest about looking at data in different areas that I would normally look for outside of banking, outside of retail banking, and looking at things that I could then leverage and learn at home away from work to improve my skills. And of course, I found Tableau Public. I opened my account there and just started looking through all the different authors that every day publish new content, and the ability of downloading the workbook, opening it up and just see what they have done, what they've created, and you can learn from it. It's just, I think for me, it's probably one of the most valuable things that you have around Tableau. And then you have a Twitter community, a really nice community. There's a few examples. Paul Benoob was super. I was really struggling with things around server because it's not my background. So I was always asking him questions, and he was really motivating me just to look at things and pointing me to people that he knew that might know the answer. And the fact that you can share content on Twitter and ask for advice and feedback means that your skills improve rather quickly. And with that, this was a visualization that I did summer last year, and at the time I was ecstatic when I finished this. I was like, this is amazing. I'm able to create an interactive visualization where you can click on things and you can it changes, and it has links and URLs. And at the time, this was just the best thing ever. I was really proud of it. But then you soon realize, and I think Paul alluded to that earlier, you soon realize that there is so much more and so much more that you can learn. And that's a little bit of what I would like to talk about next. So the first book that I read is the one on right, so the Information Dashboard Design from Stephen Few. And you have a few others here as well. On the far left, you have Data at Work from Jorge Camões. It's focused on Excel, but best practices of data visualization still apply regardless of the tool. And then my favorite, storytelling with data. Cole has a really great way of explaining concepts, and I'd really recommend for anyone, if you're looking for a first book to kind of get you started, Cole's is definitely one of those up there. And I think if you are learning or taking your first steps data visualization, within the first 6 months, you will hear these two names straight away. As I've mentioned earlier, Stephen Few is a renowned author in data visualization. And then you have David McCandless. He used to work for The Guardian and is responsible for data. My information is beautiful. The key point is Stephen Few in certain aspects can be a bit grating on his blog, and it might not appeal to everyone, but it's important to read as many authors as you can and to find as much information as you can, but it's equally important to find your own voice. Learn from there are authors like Ben Jones, Albert Cairo, Emmanuel Lima, but try not to sideline with any particular area. And the more you learn, it's important that you find your own voice and you develop that. And you can find, and another thing that was interesting, and this is from Georges Camois's book, before starting this journey of learning data visualization, if someone asked me about charts, or if I was thinking about charts, I would say, oh, I know a line chart, an area chart, a bar chart, and a pie chart. And discover that the tools that you have available to you and the different ways that you can show the data and you didn't know about it's immense. So for instance, I really like trellis charts. I think they are a really good way of showing data. But if you're doing something personally for your own for home and you're not publishing it, it's not that important. But if you're doing anything that's going to be seen by the public, you need to make sure that you don't use something that's complex, technically complex just because, but that there is some justification behind that. If it's easier for someone to understand a bar chart, there's no need for you to go and create a parallel plot, even though that might be 10 times more difficult. There are a few exceptions, which I'll talk a little bit about later. And then there are a few other sites that I really like to look into, and they are really good sources of inspiration. I had many people ask me, so where do you find this? Or where did you find that? I guess 538 is one of the first ones to look at. They are really good in terms of sports analysis. And they've also done something really good this week on gun deaths. DFT for, again, sports. John Byrne Murdoch does amazing work on sports there, so tennis and football, but also other subjects as well. Andy Kurt on visualizing with data. And the one on the far left that you see there is Visual Loop. It's a Brazilian website. It's more focused on journalism, infographics, but it's available in Portuguese as well as English. And you can just go through all the different posts that they have there, just to give just to get a lot more inspiration. And I often look at that mainly for color palettes as well, because if someone already went through the trouble of creating a view that harmonizes in terms of colors, it's quite easy that you can then apply that to your own visualizations as well. And then going back to my first visualization, it's really interesting to go back and then identify what we could have done, what I could have done differently. So for instance, you can barely read these numbers. There are a lot of zeros taking a lot of space that you don't actually need. Remove the lines. These are really distracting, these squares around them. And I have something, I've always done something with every time that I do a dashboard or a project of data visualization, is to never go back and make any changes. And the reason for that is just so, say for instance, in 5 years' time, I can go back and see my learning curve. I can identify what I did at a certain point, and then a few months, a few years later, I can identify why did I do that and how I should have done things differently and how I learned and what were the things that helped me understand that. So it's something that I do, and I find that it helps you because it kind of measures your progress as you go through. And then practicing, and practicing means finding data. It doesn't really matter what it is. I've heard people that are trying to get started, and what they usually say is, yes, but I haven't found a data set that really interests me. There is no point in waiting for that perfect golden data set that has 100 million records, and it has everything that you want, you're going to find loads of insights. Sometimes a small data set is easy to just get started. And sometimes the small data sets are the hardest to be able to tell a good story with as well. But just find something that interests you. Again, it could be something like sports data or news data, and then just try to do something with it and then iterate. And then I think Andy Cosgrave mentioned that recently, that one of the best things about Tableau as well is the ability to iterate. You could start with something really simple, and in 20 minutes to 20 charts until you find something that matches what you're looking for in terms of telling the story. I often find that after those 20 minutes, I sometimes go back to the first one because that told the story better. But the ability of iterating means that you can go at a very fast pace, which other tools sometimes don't provide. And then you have to publish that. There is no point of creating just stuff just for yourself, because that means that your progress is slower. You need to be able to publish things and use Tableau Public or other or blog, so that you can get feedback and then you can improve. People are really generous with their time and in the Tableau community, and they are very kind. And if you're not comfortable with posting on Twitter some work that you've done, I promise you there are probably about more than 20 people that if you email them and ask, do you mind to take a look at something that I've done and give me some feedback, they will happily drop everything that they're doing and to do that for you. That has happened to me many a time, sometimes not really sure that I want to publish something straight away, and I'll ask a couple people beforehand. And as I said, the Tableau community is incredibly generous, and you should really leverage that as well. So just to give you a couple of examples of stuff that I've done recently. So this was back in April. What I've done was I found this website. This was the time of the earthquakes when they happened on Thursday. So on Friday, I found a website that was giving us the earthquake seismic activity in the Kumamoto region in Japan. And so I've created the visualization on Friday, and then I've updated it again on Saturday and again on Sunday. This was actually just for Twitter because there was so many contradictory reports of where the earthquakes were happening at and the frequency, that I thought, well, this could be a good way of showing exactly where they are happening at what time, and it just gives people the ability. So I did put this as a GIF rather than a visualization in Tableau Public. And then this was something that I did at the beginning of this year, which was kind of an app, and it uses a technique that I learned from Robert from Interworks and leverages containers. So the idea is that you can learn and use this as a learning tool to look at the kanjis with the grade, and then you can look at the number, the stroke order, and then you click on the kanji. It gives you the information a little bit about the kanji and how to read in both types of kanji reading. For those that have tried to learn Japanese or Mandarin, know that kanji are really, really hard to learn. So another example is Makeover Monday, and this was a Makeover Monday that I did I think again at the beginning of this year, and looks at urban diversity in America. And I thought it was interesting that West is a lot more, it became quite clear as I split by regions, quite clear that West is a lot more integrated than, for instance, the Midwest or the South. But again, these are just examples of things that I find interesting. I'm sure you'll find other examples. And with that, I think this is the last part I would like to cover, is why you should take part in the community, and kind of pay it back as well a little bit. One of the things is Makeover Monday. I think a lot of people already talked about that. Alex mentioned that on her intro keynote. So many people are doing it at the moment. So a data set is posted on the site by Andy Kribel on Sunday night, and then everyone joins in and looks at data in a different way. So again, if you're looking for a data set and you don't know where to go on, I think there have been about 27 weeks, so 27 data sets that you can use. What allows you to do, and I personally do this with Makeover Monday, is because it's not meant to be published anywhere, I push my skills sometimes to the max. And for instance, I did something last week, which was a circle, dynamic circle. Certainly a bar chart would have been a better way of visualizing that type of data, but I wanted to learn. And again, to the point of the community being so generous with their time, I emailed Jeffrey Schaefer and Michael Mixon, and both of them came back to me within hours with two ways of doing dynamic circle, which I posted on the blog. And then you have things like Iron Fizz, again, that has been mentioned by Alex earlier. And this is where you can apply all the skills that you've been learning for the past few months and trying out on Makeover Monday or just on your own data sets. And this was my idea of looking at how much food is wasted every year across the world. And this was the intro slide, and it's just another way of looking at data. And again, it's where on these initiatives or reviz is where you can really push your skills, and that of course is going to be good for your job as well. So the final thing that I'd like to talk about is the blog. So I created the blog back in November. The first objective was to help others take their first steps in data visualization. And I think kind of the second one, and it was alluded to by Josh on his talk, was you need to create a portfolio. And I'd like to think of data visualization practitioners a little bit like a designer practitioner. A designer wouldn't go into an interview with just a CV. They would take a portfolio with them. And it's certainly the case where I work, that if I'm about to hire someone for Tableau, I would like to see their Tableau Public, or I'd like to see some of the work that they've done in Tableau, because you can write a lot about Tableau, but if you can see someone's workbook and can understand the steps that they've gone through, you know where their skill level is at least. Allows some really good way of measuring that. So I would definitely recommend, if you're just starting, publish your stuff on Tableau Public. Make sure that it looks harmonious and you are publishing constantly, and then use that on your job interviews if you're going for a job that's related to Tableau or data visualization. And again, the last one is to share tips, ideas, and skills. For instance, I learned from Jeffrey Schaefer and Michael Mason on that example of the circle. And what I did on the blog was just exactly share what they taught me so that others can learn from it. And I think that's one of the best things about it. If you blog, you remember, you can always go back to it, and other people can learn from it as well. So I guess just my final things that I would really encourage anyone that's starting on learning data visualization or starting with Tableau is just find some data. Doesn't really matter what it is. Don't really be picky about it. As I've mentioned, Makeover Monday is on its 27th week, so there's 27 data sets for you to work with. Practice. Join your community. There are local Tableau user groups pretty much all around the world, or join Twitter, or there are a few LinkedIn groups, and share your work, because that means that you'll get feedback and you'll improve and you start connecting to other people, and that could be the best way for you to learn. And with that, does anyone have any questions?
Well, no questions so far on Twitter. Lots of compliments and great points, great little tweetable moments that you've provided, David. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily. So I was looking for the chat box and I couldn't find it.
Well, actually, one of the questions was, do you get to, that was in the chat, was, does your company provide you time to work on Makeover Monday or whatever the project is, or do you do that on your own time? And we've got some discussion going on in the chat window, but if you could provide your response, that would be great.
No. So my role currently involves around 10 to 15% at most of designing dashboards. I spend a lot of time lately, because we are close to release, on server setup and making sure that the whole infrastructure is working correctly. So I'm not doing anywhere near as much Tableau at this point at work, and I certainly don't have the time to do that while I'm there. So all the Makeover Monday and all the projects that I get involved in are outside work. I'm lucky that my wife is part of the data school, so she understands, because she's spending exactly the same amount of time as I am outside with Tableau. But no, but I think it was Josh or someone mentioned, an intern, Jeremy, mentioning someone training just using Makeover Monday. I think that's a really, really, really good way of learning, because learning the skill means that quickly, like that, with the summer intern, I guess that it's a quick ramp up, so that they can be really useful for the company when you need to start applying things in more of a business context. Because if the business side as well as the tool all at the same time, and you have the problem of making a mistake on the business side, and that can be costly, I think it's a lot harder. Whereas if someone allows, I know a lot of the consultant companies allow their consultants a bit of free time to do either Makeover Monday or just develop their skills, and I definitely would encourage that. But currently we don't have that in our side.
All right, great. Thank you so much. And of course,